last time on Veiled Fate. Yeah, we're talking about Veiled Fate again. IV Studios. They're giving us the new expansion here, Tribunal. As you can see, shiny, shiny box with a very dark cover. What do you need to know about it? It's modular, folks. Mix and match, throw them all in, have some craziness. This is a chaotic expansion. Do you like chaos? Are you like me? Well, if you like that, you're going to like this. Let me run you through it. Everything you need to know. What's going on here, what's new, and why it doesn't fall for some of the traps of other expansions of just doing too much. Let's go. So in case you're not familiar with what Veiled Fate is, quick overview here at the beginning, and then into the nitty gritty, why you should be picking up this expansion if you enjoy this base game, because I'll make the argument right at the beginning, it makes it better. It makes it better without increasing the rules complexity or overhead or length, and that is the number one rule for all expansions here. You're taking one of your 9 different colored demigods, you're taking the 5 different, actually 6 in this case, depending on if you add the extra module here, of powers that you're manipulating as you maneuver these characters around the different sections of the map, the city, and then slowly gain renown around the outside of the board. That's all. Completing quests, voting with secret voting cards, having little city cards that change the dynamic each round, and having an age-old event each time to give it some more asymmetry. That's the game in a nutshell. It's a mix-match bluff. Who's who, you don't know until the end of the game who was manipulating which one, because this thing sets it apart as well a little bit differently, is you can move any of the demigods you want. It doesn't have to be yours, so no one knows which one you secretly are. Best thing about this game as a whole. So what does this expansion then actually add? I mentioned it's going into the modularity. Brief overview of the modules here, then a few things that I love, a few things that you might be needing to know, and a few things that might not make it right for you. First up, this is the biggest point. This is the biggest point. There are a couple of these modules that I would not play without. Point number 1, that I would say, okay, I'm going to play with this one every single time. And the first one up is actually Hadria. And this is going to sound weird, but she just sort of follows you around on the map. So if you ever move to another area, she just follows you. If you go over here, she goes over here. And she actually keeps track with renown along the outside as well. But the tricky part is her renown is always in the highest in the area. And so that makes it different, because the end game, this is where it changes, right? This is why I would never not use this module with her, because she gains renown when you smite people, right? Who doesn't love smiting people? And smiting people is probably the most underrated action in this game as a whole when you're looking at all 5 of these as you're portaling, transfiguring, smiting, omniscience, and influencing, right? Like, you want to be doing the other stuff. You know, you want to be moving, you want to be swapping around in the quests, you want to be extra voting. You know, sometimes smiting and just getting someone out there isn't the most attractive. Now it is, because at the end of the game, if you have less renown than her, you're good. If you have more renown, though, you're automatically disqualified. I am a totally chaotic neutral player, and I love that dynamic. That was the absolute standout for me of this expansion in a nutshell. And again, I would not probably play without her anymore. The other thing that she does, she makes going down here to the abyss actually worthwhile. I got smited down to the abyss. Well, guess what? You now have cards that are going to be acquired instead of the regular fate cards down here, corresponding to the god powers that'll just allow you to do them an extra time for free to make up for it. So it's kind of like Champions of Midgard, right? When they added that expansion, it really behooved you to have your warriors die, because you get an actual benefit. So if you get take thatted in this case, don't worry, you're going to be able to take that back, right? Now you just might be going then, Chris, I'm just going to get myself smited a whole bunch. However, if you're using these powers, with great power comes great corruption, not responsibility, because these corrupted tokens or icons in the corners of this card actually mean that you're going to lose renown if you have the most of them at the end of the game. So you got to be careful. You got to be, just dipping your toes into the evil, not fully submerging. Otherwise, it's going to cost you. Just make sure you're less evil than your counterpart around the table, right? Now, second module, right? This one is probably going to be the most divisive of them all, but let's say with this multiplayer game, I don't want to be like everybody else. Like, you play your regular games, your other deduction style games, Murder in Hong Kong, you play your werewolves, you play your Among Cultists, and you don't like just being the generic character, right? The generic demigod. It doesn't have enough asymmetry for me, Chris. Well, now I've got some celestials for you. No, literally, I've got celestial cards here. All of them giving you different options because you get to be the one, not necessarily in a 1v all, but sort of a 1v all sort of way. Sorcerer, we'll talk about you in a second. But these are giving you different objectives, different setups, and different win conditions here on every single one of them. And it just changes the dynamics, right? You don't draw the demi card. You keep it face down in front of you. So if we take this, for example, the steward. Steward, please tell me where to go. Well, the steward quest basically says, if you have demis within a certain renown range, enough of them, you win. The prophet, if 2 demi-gods have died, you draw 4 of them, and you can force them by, basically getting their renown to match a token that you have face down that they don't know what it is. So if they're in the wrong area, you flip it up and, oh, boom, right? Different dynamics. And again, this one's going to be more potentially manipulative away from the core structure of the game as a whole. So it's going to bring probably the biggest different dynamic more than anything else. Beautiful to look at though too. I love the artwork on this, and I'm not really always a big fan of that, but it doesn't really always matter, but I like it in this case. So that's going to be the biggest thing, because all of these, right, I've got 6 different ones here, and I've also got the sorcerer. Sorcerer is a little different though. And just to give you a few other examples real quick before we get to the sorcerer, you have mother to all. And so if all of the used demigods are ahead of the unused demigods, you manipulate that way, you win. Eredin. If you can correctly deduce who is who, all of them, you win. So you're going to be actually sitting there with a scratch pad, moving around, manipulating, but not actually necessarily being a demigod either. So it changes the dynamic as a whole, but it doesn't change the game length. It doesn't change necessarily the mechanisms. It just changes how you're inserting yourself, which again, very carefully done. And then, like I said, you have the sorcerer, right? The sorcerer is a little different, but again, it's another variation. Sorcerer actually has spells. You still draw your demi card, but these spells allow you to manipulate things slightly differently on what you're used to, slight variations of those main actions of the demi. And essentially, all you're doing is trying to get your sorcerer's renown and your demi's renown in the same area by the end of the game, while still potentially dealing with the other celestials or dealing with the other servants we'll talk about in a minute, or Hadria, because you still have to survive the annihilation. You can't be higher than her. So just a clever different way of doing something the same but different. Sort of last but not least here with the expansion content, we have your servants right here. These are actually the coolest looking miniatures of the game, because we got like a dragon, a scorpion, and a flying creature thingy. But apart from that, what are they actually doing? And of the 3 of them, again, this is probably going to be second for me, but again, I don't know if I necessarily want to play without this. It adds a little bit more tension, but it doesn't change the depth or the dynamics of the game as a whole. See a theme there? What you do with these is they all start in areas, and essentially that other action that I mentioned, the command action, that's the one that you have to use if the servants are in play. Because what the servants do, well, you'll notice that 2 of them, Feathers and Scorpion, actually kind of line up with what's at the top of the quest cards in the beginning, right? Your Feathers and your Scorpion, meaning double result, starting them off. If they are in the same area as this quest, not on the quest, but if they're in the same area, they influence it towards that side. So the dynamic changes as a whole. And then your little Invictus Dragon folk, yeah, he just doubles the effect of the quest rewards. So you really want him in there. Well, if you're winning, but if you lose it, it's still doubled. So that, again, just a simple twist on what they're offering is more than enough for me to say, again, I probably wouldn't play without this portion of things either. It doesn't dynamically change the interactions, the meta bluffing, the guessing who, but it definitely changes the swing of things. It makes it more of a dynamic. And you know what? It's fun to try and get up to the higher scores sometimes than be stuck down here meddling in the lower ones. And that's what's going to give you. And who doesn't like that? The last module part of this expansion is a little bit twofold, and that's giving you just more card options, right? Because, you know, I just played Veil of Eternity tonight, and the one thing I said was I wouldn't mind a few more cards, right? Res Arcana, the expansions, give it more cards to play through. Deck builders with more cards. Star Wars Unlimited, getting more cards after this first go around, right? That's what people want. And that's what you're getting here in the form of these quest adventures where they're part of the areas that are already down, and you just set it off to the side and there's one spot and you get to similarly vote and utilize it. So again, if you're in an area, you can just spend an extra action to go over there to kind of get a one-off for being the first one in one of these, in one of the ages as a whole. But they're a little bit riskier. They're a little bit high risk, high reward as you go along with the rewards of these quests, as you can see at the bottom of the cards. And then the other thing is just more fate cards, a little bit different dynamic to spruce it up than just the one or two that you're used to. And these just add more from a chaotic neutral standpoint, folks. Chaotic neutral. You just choose whoever the active player is. You add an extra scorpion or a feather, right? Really simple, really straightforward there. Or a double. Also very straightforward. No big issue there, right? Nah, Chris, this isn't crazy. Discard. Now, when this gets pulled, every other vote card that hasn't been pulled, discarded. Boom. Whoops, your votes don't count anymore, right? Chaotic neutral right there. Oh, and then this one. Resolve the opposite side of the first slot. Oh, I beat you to it. I got the best prime slot. I got the top one. Uno reverse. And just kidding, you better hope that that one's not in the pile. Ha ha ha. And then the last one. The active player chooses somebody else to just add an extra fate card in right now. Just add an extra fate card in. Go ahead. Person that I think is going for me or person that I think is trying to sabotage it. Boom. There you go. So again, three of these four, I probably wouldn't play without, because this doesn't add anything, you know. Oh, I can't handle the overhead complexity. It's going to make the game. No, it's not. You just go, boom, on top. There you go. Mix them in, shuffle. You got a little bit different dynamic. Can you read? Good. And that's all you need to be able to do this. Servants, you just move them around, take the extra action. Gives you something to do when you maybe don't have anything else you want to do. And I didn't mention, but they can't actually stack up in the same area, so you don't have to worry about that. So the manipulation of when and where, you may have to be clever to get the one in the place that you want. And if anything, you're like me, you like feeling clever. And that's what this game now allows you to do a little bit more of. Hadria, again, wouldn't play without. The dynamic of changing, I'm not just going to be at the top, because again, you can have a little bit of a runaway leader. If someone gets up there, yeah, you can have a little bit of king making. You can have a little bit of tear down Munchkin style pile on, if you will. But where is she sitting? And who you're trying to get above there? How many are trying to get above there? And are you willing to take her corruption on to then maybe mitigate yourself to get back down later? Again, layers, but not layers of rule book or layers of setup or layers of length of time. Those are, for me personally, big yellow flags for expansions. Things that I go, I'm not really sure I ever needed this expansion. And how many crowdfunding games do we have nowadays that you go and you get expansion after expansion after expansion, and you can't tell what one you're going to like, or which one is actually going to be worth it, or which one is going to add, even at retail, something like Isle of Skye, right? Like, they redid the big box of Isle of Skye because the first expansion was kind of bleh. Second expansion was what everyone wanted. And then they did the big box without the first one and added some little modules. Same thing with the upcoming space-based release of Genesis. You know, Shy Moon Pluto was okay. My wife and I both thought, well, some of these mechanics are fine, and some of them are just could easily do without them, right? Same thing with Cascadia Landmarks, where they just threw in a 5 to 6 player expansion in coalition with the extra content that everybody wanted. And this doesn't necessarily do that. Now, again, if you don't like those dynamics, if you don't like more of the chaos or the chaotic gameplay. Well, I mean, this game probably isn't used for the first place, but if you look at this game and you go, I wish it just had a little bit more asymmetry, a little bit more dynamic, a little bit more power-esque, a little bit more just variability, none of this is going to affect the replayability. Don't confuse the two. This replayability with the dynamic of the meta and the social deduction in the first place is there regardless of the expansion. But again, it adds something beneficial, mutually acceptable without increasing all of the negatives that are often associated. I can tell that some significant amount of time has gone in to make it in that fashion because it didn't feel like it changed the game. It just honestly made the game better. And that is the bottom line. You want an expansion that makes the game you love better. It doesn't always take a game and make a good game great, but it makes a great game a game you love even more. And that's what this does. So again, 3 of the 4, I wouldn't ever probably play without, in that order. Hadria, the servants, the cards, that's kind of like 1 and 2A and 2B. And then the last one is the one versus alls, the Celestials-esque, sometimes utilizing the extra cards, sometimes utilizing the extra, scoring victory conditions. They're a little bit more obtuse, but it gives you a little bit more of a bluffing meta gimmick outside of this universe in the same sense, right? So, yeah. Am I pleased with it? Yeah. Did it actually move this game up further on my IV Studios game list at this point? Yeah, absolutely. This is probably second still behind Mythic Mischief, just as an abstract lover. But I don't have social deduction games as a whole, many of them in my collection. And this is one of the few that I can say, yeah, this is one that easily can stay in my collection because of the dynamics this offers and because of what this just adds in the first place. Who isn't going to like this expansion? Again, if you don't like a lot of things going on, if just the amount of these cards with the take that and the player elimination, just with these cards and the ability to potentially nullify votes or add votes in at a later point or discard the votes that are out there to disrupt things, you're not going to like that. If you don't like the fact that, she's going to get in the way and you just can't run up the score and just kind of, have a bunch of people up super high and hope that you can squeak one out at the end, it's not going to do that. If you don't want to risk reward with, the servants as well as the adventure cards, you're not going to like that either. And again, it doesn't change the core dynamic of, some of these quest cards just being you flip a coin and see what you get. There's no mitigation for that. But the extra command action, super nice. If it was too convoluted for you in terms of the areas and the quests and the playing the cards in the first place, again, this doesn't, distill it down to any simpler. It's not going to be any more straightforward than what it was previously. This expansion, if you did not like it the first time around, I guarantee will not change your mind. But if you're on the fence, if you liked it but didn't love it, if you loved it but still thought it was a little bit needed something else, this is easily going to vault you over into the, yeah, this is freaking awesome. So I don't even know what else is going to be on the campaign. I'm imagining they'll have a few other little things to go along with it. And I wouldn't be surprised if you get a few more, age cards, city cards, whatever else to go alongside, because again, that's an easy add-on and an easy way to just give you more of the good stuff that this thing already does. Freaking crazy, chaotic, neutral, approved. So there you go. Veiled Fate Tribunal. Everything you know, hopefully, to help you make the right decision for yourself. There you go. Stay classy. Have a great freaking day. Subscribe! Subscribe! If you haven't, because that'd be super awesome. I'm really close to 10K, and that'd be kind of cool to get there at some point in my lifetime. So, I'm done. Peace out. They sent me the copy. Thank you, IV Studios. Have a great freaking fantastic day. Play something you like.